In nearly 300 episodes of Off the Podium, we, for some reason, have never spoken to an athlete from the sport of tennis. And we are breaking that today because I am so pumped and excited to interview our next guest today. Competed at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo in tennis and has had an amazing career outside of the Olympics as well. Former number 77 in singles, number 21 in doubles as well, and continues to do great things out there on the tennis circuit. It is a pleasure to welcome to the show Sharon Fichman. Sharon, pleasure to have you on Off the Podium and break this tennis drought. We're here. Tennis, get on board.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to be your first tennis player, but probably not your last.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Hopefully
Because
not your last.
exactly, we'll start a trend kind of moving forward. Because I mean, like a lot of people, I absolutely love tennis. It's a sport that obviously the world loves, and I always find it interesting with Olympic tennis because, of course, there are lots of people who argue, oh, tennis shouldn't be at the Olympics. It's not the biggest, the most prestigious version of the sport. People want to win Wimbledon, things like that. But I completely disagree. I think it should be a place at the Olympics, which I'd be intrigued to find out when you're growing up and you're sort of playing tennis and you're going through the ranks, are you more focused on, I want to win Wimbledon one day? Or is there that level of, no, I do want to be an Olympian and it would be a goal to go to the Olympics playing tennis one day?
I would say both. I think, there's definitely the point that people make where, tennis being a professional sport, having four Grand Slams, one of them being in Australia, um, you know, that's something that a lot of players have their sights on growing up and winning a Grand Slam. That being said, though, we're still all athletes, and the Olympics is sort of the pinnacle of sport in a lot of ways. And it has so much history and it has so much prestige. And it's such an incredible accomplishment to be able to go. So that's as well a huge aspiration for a lot of tennis players because it's just such a monumental achievement. So I think that the answer is both. Even though, with playing the Olympics as a tennis player or competing in the Olympics as a tennis player, it sort of carries just a different kind of weight. You're really just you're playing for your country. You're playing for yourself as well, but really for your country and trying to represent your country as well as you possibly can. And also just being around all these incredible different athletes. You don't get to really do that in any other
Yeah.
event of the Olympics, So um, it's a tough one to answer. And I think it's also player dependent. I think for me, I would say that I first had my sights set on winning the French Open when I was a kid. But then as I got older, it just became more and more enticing to want to be an Olympian. And I think that it sort of shifted for me. But there are some athletes that are like, I would want to compete in the Olympics more than a Grand Slam or winning, having a gold medal in the Olympics means more. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. They're both
It's
pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's just fascinating kind of how every Olympic cycle you have that question. I think one thing we've talked a lot about at the show is the fact that, golf came back in 2016 and a lot of people question that because you haven't had the massive names come into golf at the Olympics yet. But I think it was kind of a bit like that with tennis when it first started. And it's maybe only really been sort of in the last 20 or so years that you're getting these big names coming on board. I mean, obviously, Steffi Graf famously won the Golden Slam, in 1988. But the fact that you'd had someone like Novak Djokovic went out of his way last year to be like, no, I'm going to the Olympics. Roger's done it before. Serena, Venus dominated the Olympics. People like this who go out of their way, who don't need to go to an Olympics. They're already, are great without having an Olympic medal. But I like that. I like that aspect that you've got some tennis players who are like, no, this is as equal, if not, a little bit more to have that opportunity to, as you said, represent your country and go for an Olympic medal.
Yeah, definitely. I think also the cool part about tennis is that you have the professional side of your sport, but then you have the opportunity to compete at the Olympics, which is predominantly filled with amateur athletes. And that's kind of a blessing because, there's a lot of sports in the Olympics that that's it. That's that is what they were, pouring their blood, sweat, and tears into for years and years and years. And it's the Olympics, um, and that's a lot of pressure, and it's also incredible. But then there isn't like a 52-week tour that they get to just jump back into.
Yeah.
So it's really special to actually be able to have both. And I think, yes, sure, there are some players that maybe don't see it as don't see it the same way that maybe I do or other athletes do, other tennis players do. But there's a lot that really feel like it's so incredible to have that opportunity. So I think it's pretty great for sure.
Which, growing up then, sort of playing tennis, were you athletic in other sports? Were you sort of trying, like most kids, like, let's try this, let's try that? And was it something that, obviously you're dreaming about winning the French Open in tennis, but in any other sports, Olympic sports, thinking, hey, this could be a possibility if this goes a certain way?
Yeah, I come from a tennis family, so I joke, like, I didn't really have a choice. My parents love tennis. My brother, I have an older brother, he also played tennis nationally. And I think that was sort of what I excelled most at. But I did grow up playing other sports. I love playing soccer. I actually competed in gymnastics. I was pretty good at that. It just, definitely a more dangerous sport on your body. I also like to figure skate. As a kid, that was really fun for me. So, I dabbled in different things. I grew up playing soccer, in Canada, they call it soccer.
Soccer here in Australia too. It's fine. You get away
here,
with it.
yeah, okay, perfect. So yeah, I think that really helped my tennis, the fact that I grew up playing all sorts of different sports. But I definitely think I was encouraged by my family to kind of stick with tennis because that's what they knew, and sort of we all played it. And frankly, I did pretty well at it at a young age. So I think that also helped with the decision to stick with it.
One thing I actually wanted to ask, because I think you might be our first guest on the show to compete at a Maccabiah Games, and we love sort of talking about the different multi-sport events that are out there, and you won a gold, a silver, and a bronze at, I think, the age of 14, if I'm not mistaken. So what is that experience like? And was that sort of your first multi-sport event that you had been to at that stage?
At that stage, yeah. And to be honest, I think at that age, I didn't really grasp the magnitude of it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. It is huge in Israel and around the world for Jewish people. But I was so young and I sort of like didn't fully understand. It was also really cool because I was the flag bearer for Canada. So that was really fun. The stadium was massive and it was packed. And I remember when I stepped outside and I was holding the flag and, the whole kind of team Canada was behind me. I was like, oh my goodness, like this is actually a really big deal. This is so cool. So that was my first, I would say that is a really good kind of parallel in that sense to draw from. I would say that, Canada there's something called the Canada Summer Games. Yep. So it's something like that on a much smaller scale for kids. So there's, people, but you're kind of like regions of Canada sort of against each other in that sense, and different sports. So there was that, but certainly not to the magnitude of the Maccabiah Games. And then, Olympics, that's obviously the big one. The one everyone aims for.
Yeah, because we often talk about sort of mainly with our winter athletes is, they don't really have multi-sport events that they can do to, obviously, as you said, Canada kind of have the Canada Games, but for a lot of, say, a swimmer or a track and field athlete, you have a Commonwealth Games, a Pan Am Games, depending on where you are in the world and that. So tennis is not really a sport, like it was in the Commonwealth Games, I think once in 2010, and then it's sort of never been there. I'm not sure if tennis is a Pan Am sport, so it's kind of, it's not exactly
it is a Pan Am sport.
It is a Pan Am sport. So, I mean, it seems sporadic. It's not like the guaranteed sport to be at a multi-sport game, so you make the most of it when you can.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good way to put it. It's an interesting one because there's so much history in tennis. It's not like a newer sport because, those newer sports are always popping up. So I think that's sort of what gets it in some of these type of like multi-sport events. And that it's also, but at the same time, it's sort of not like one of the, you know, I'm not sure what the right word is, but you know, one of the original, that's the word I'm looking for, original sports of like the Olympics, you know? So it's tricky. It's tricky. It's also tricky because it's a professional sport. So there's always that debate of like, you know, do professional sports belong in the Olympics or these types of events? And it's tough. You know, there's two sides to it. But it does seem to kind of find its way in things and then sort of disappear and then find its way back. I guess you just gotta
Yeah.
go with it.
Exactly. Which I'd be fascinated to learn when you're going through and you're progressing, you turn professional. Obviously, you know, you're predominantly a double players now. Of course, you had a lot of success in doubles and at the Olympics in the doubles, which we'll talk about. But of course, there is still singles. Do you get to a point where you, I don't know, realize that doubles is more your game versus the singles? I mean, kind of at what point when you're going through the career is that maybe a realization? Is it a coach's choice? I mean, how does all that work?
I think again, it's athlete dependent. My story is very unique. I started very young and I was successful pretty young. I got burnt out and I also was pretty injured by the time I quit the first time. So I quit in 2016 in May. I was just really, I kind of fell out of love with the sport. I battled a bunch of injuries, kind of mismanaged my schedule, and that's sort of when the injuries piled on. Stayed in a coaching situation that probably ran its course, and it just all those factors together made me just not really love what I was doing anymore. And then, you know, I decided to come back and play in 2018, at the end of 2018, because at the time, my at that time boyfriend was also was an Olympian, and he was aiming for his second Olympics. And a few weeks before his second Olympics, he got in a really serious accident. And his career was sort of over, didn't make it to the Olympics. So that inspired me to come back and play to try and make the Tokyo Olympics. And then at that time, I, you know, was thinking, oh, you know, he'll come with me, and then he can fulfill his goal of going to 2 Olympics. But you know, pandemic happened, and a lot of other things. You know, life situation changed. We're not together anymore, but it did inspire me to come back and play. And at the time, my logic was, well, you know, what's the fastest way to get as high as I can? It's probably going to be through doubles. Singles, it takes more time to climb up the rankings. Doubles, you know, I'd had a lot of success in doubles, even though singles was my main focus. And I knew that that one was faster to move up. So I had, you know, time was against me. So I just decided to focus on one area, and I picked the one that I could move up quicker. So that's sort of my story with doubles. Also, you know, I've been playing a long time, and, you know, I'm 31, I'm 32 in December. I started playing tennis when I was 4. So there's a lot of years on my body. And some athletes are very lucky to just be able to play as long as they want and really not have anything major happen. It's very rare, but it happens. There's some athletes that their career ends way too soon due to injuries. I think I'm quite fortunate, but you know, I do have things that like I'm just trying to manage physically at this point in my career, and singles takes just a big toll on my body. And as much as it'd be fun to be able to go out there and play, I have to be realistic with like how much pain I'm willing to go through. And the thing is with singles is like, you know, you have to bounce back every single day. And I just at a point where like, I don't know that physically I'll be able to do what I know I'm capable of or want to. So that was sort of, you know, kind of all the factors in my decision to focus on doubles and remain focused on doubles. I do love playing singles. I'll play some, you know, singles in practice and things like that. But yeah, I think just for me, it makes sense. For other players, it's a number of things. Some people just never really have the success in singles the way they did in doubles, and they just had to decide because there was just too much disparity in their ranking, and they had to, you know, either sacrifice one because they were getting in big tournaments with doubles and not singles, and you know, the goal is to keep them similar. So if you have to decide, then sometimes players will say, you know what, I guess I'll just be a doubles player and just play singles once in a while if it happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so many factors. Usually not the coaches. In the end, it's the player's decision, but could be a coach saying, "Hey, I think you could really focus on that and do better," and then maybe that sort of sparks the idea. And then there's some people that just really don't like competing in singles. They prefer the team thing. Tennis is a very lonely sport, and doubles is kind of a way of having someone out there with you.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different reasons for sure.
It's fascinating to hear that, because I mean, my blossoming tennis career that lasted a year when I was 15. Clearly, I'm on the pro tour, so I did very well. But I mean, I hated playing doubles. I hated it. Like, it was kind of like, Ben, your partner. No, I want to play singles. I was selfish. So it was kind of always never my favorite. But yeah, it's that aspect you're saying. It is a lonely sport, I can imagine, and particularly the way you've got to back up, day to day, everything along those lines. So it's fascinating. And one thing, growing up in Australia, I mean, we had the Woodies, growing up in the 90s and into the 2000s. So doubles tennis was very prominent for us, more so than singles really in that era. So, that got a lot of attention, and it's fun to watch doubles. Like, doubles is one that needs more coverage, I feel, because it's always about the singles, and then you never see. I mean, we saw it in the Australian Open earlier this year, with Nick and everything that happened there, and how entertaining that turned out to be. So more love for doubles is all I'm saying, basically, with this little rant.
For sure. What's really interesting is that doubles is more widely played internationally than singles on like a recreational club level. So it's very interesting that singles get so much more airtime because, to be honest with you, most of the world plays doubles. And when I talk to players or people, that play tennis for fun, they say, like, I love when I can go to a tournament live, because then I get to watch doubles matches and I can learn and try and do things that the pros do. And so it's interesting. I kind of think it's like a chicken or the egg. Like, is singles more popular because it has more airtime? If you give doubles more airtime, could it be more popular? But you have to try it first to know, because people say, oh no, the singles tennis gets a lot more views. Well, I don't know. Part of me is almost like, do you want to just try it out to see if maybe you're wrong? Or does it have to be more like pushed and protested and whatever in order to give that airtime to doubles? So I don't know, but that is an interesting fact. You think like most people want that, so you think like give the people what they want.
Yeah, exactly. It is kind of interesting to think about how that all plays out. And one thing I love about tennis, and one thing I don't know if athletes in tennis get the credit they deserve, is if I had to say who I think the toughest athletes are in the world, I would rank tennis players as very high up there, because the thing that's unique about tennis is you have no end date in terms of a match. You begin a match and you could play for 5 days technically until it is over. There's no way of ending it, basically, on a conventional state. And then during a Grand Slam, you've got 2 weeks. You can play up to 7 matches. You've got to back that up. And then, like, the endurance that a tennis athlete has to have is absolutely incredible. When it comes to gym, like, what are you focusing on? Is it all cardio and endurance-based things? I mean, strength, obviously, I can imagine, for the strokes and the shots and everything like that. But I mean, to be so well-rounded in that endurance aspect, I can imagine there's lots you've got to focus on.
Yeah, and that is an excellent question about, conditioning. It's also such a loaded question. I will also add to the fact that tennis is a tough sport, that point you made. It has quite possibly the worst season of all professional sports. There is literally no off season. There's like 45 seconds to take a breath after your last tournament. Like, the season is 10 and a half months. And then you have 6 weeks to have a training block, you get a quick break. And then you have to be in like peak physical condition to last another 10 and a half months. It's actually insane. It's ridiculous. On top of the fact that matches can go forever. There's no like time limit and overtime, etc. and that tournaments last a week and there's a tournament every single week. It's nuts. It really is nuts. So to answer your question, to be honest with you, a lot of your fitness is your sport. A lot of, and I think what happens in the gym changes over time. When you're younger, a lot of it is sort of like developing that base and that foundation, teaching good habits, really good warm-ups, really good cool downs, really good injury prevention things, figuring out where your instabilities are and stuff as you're growing, and working on those and trying to make sure that like your shoulders are strong, but not too strong. Shoulders are strong in the right spots. Because tennis, you're running a lot. You can't really afford to carry extra weight in the sense of like being too muscular, right? Like you need just enough muscle. And so there's a lot of that. It's a lot of prevention. It's a lot of like load management. So, on the days you feel good, you push. On the days you need rest, you rest. It's just also constantly pivoting. You can do really well in a tournament and then all of a sudden your schedule changes and maybe you skip the following week and just rest, or maybe you're kind of in a rut. You don't do very well. You lose a bunch of weeks in a row. So you have more downtime. So maybe you train a bit harder because you lost in the first round and there's 6 days till your next tournament. So it's so different. It's so different. And it really, you have to sort of respond and pivot a lot. But, in terms of what you need to do and what you need to have in your training schedule for conditioning, you need to have cardio. And in that cardio, it's not usually like long, slow things. It's like intervals, a lot of interval training, plyo, there's a ton of that. You have to be very explosive. Yes, you need strength for sure. So when you do your strength training, it's also kind of how you do it. You know what I mean? It's not just like low, slow, full range. You're like going slow down and explosive up when you squat. It's like the rhythm of it too. Also like figuring out how many sets and reps to do. And you do that based on when you're going to compete. So, it's like people have to know what they're doing in order to do it properly. There's also a lot of footwork and agility and coordination stuff that you're doing. And then you try and do some of it on court as well, because, no matter what you do in the gym, nothing's going to mimic your sport. So trying to incorporate like fitness on the tennis court too is really important. There's a lot, but, and as you get older, it changes. I would say now at this age, at my age, I'm all about injury prevention and management, and just maintaining, I'm not trying to like build and like put my body in the best shape. I'm just trying to like keep it together, keep it strong, keep it happy, and keep it as pain-free as possible.
Which I also imagine reaction training, particularly with doubles, I can imagine that obviously with how that's so played at the net and everything along those lines. But the mental aspect, I always love learning about mental aspect of all sports on this show. But people who watch tennis and can see there that, the long 3-set match that you're coming from behind, there's always, things to get back into matches and that sort of stuff. I mean, what sort of mental training would say you focus on to really kind of make sure that if you're in a tough 3-setter to overcome adversity, you can turn it around?
That's a great question. I think it depends on the person. Again, for myself, I grew up in many different ways. I have an older brother, so that really helped. He was really toughen me up. Always tried to keep up with him, lost a lot. Had to figure out how to like bounce back and figure things out. Also, just competing in itself really helps. You get better at doing something by doing it. So when you compete, typically you get better at competing. There's also sports psychologists, things like that can really help. I worked with a number of them and they did help. I also think it's really important to have a coach that can help you mentally, as well as technically and tactically on a tennis court, because so much of tennis is mental. Like it's great if you have pretty technique and you can put the ball on the court, but once you are competing, it doesn't matter. You don't get bonus points because your forehand looks nice, or like your outfit is, on point, tennis pun intended. But it's really about how you put things together and how you can perform in the big moments. So having a coach that can help you through that, and maybe even like create an environment when you're training to like replicate it or challenge your mental fortitude is important. Also having a coach on the court with you when you're competing in practice, playing practice matches, can really help, because they can sort of pause things for a second, speak to you, and then you can, go about what you're trying to do on court and keep competing. So I think, having like a very good, a coach that's very knowledgeable in that is such an advantage. Also, this is something I find to be so important, and it's raising a good, well-rounded human. And I know that's so subjective, but it's not just about how you carry yourself when you're competing. Who you are comes out on the court. It comes out in moments of adversity and stress. So I feel that parents should really focus on raising a kid or their child as a person that can, handle adversity the best they can, doesn't throw fits or start crying and break down, which can happen. Everyone's human. But, if that's sort of your tendency outside the court, when you don't get your way, then that's going to happen when you step on the court, So build the person and the athlete will follow. I think that's huge. Raising an athlete is not just about how good they can hit a tennis ball. It's how they can handle adversity on and off the court. So that's huge in my opinion.
I like that. And I guess coming from a tennis family, that kind of is ingrained in you a little bit more. Whereas I don't know what John McEnroe's parents did, raising him. No disrespect to the great John McEnroe, but maybe there's the anger issues there came from somewhere. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not the most. I mean, now I'm very calm, but I am super feisty. And if you talk to anyone that knew me as a junior, like I was a nightmare. I was so feisty. I would get so mad sometimes. But I'm like, I always say I'm Eastern European. My parents were Eastern European. It's in my blood, But yeah, that's something I would say more than anything that I learned through my own mistakes. So now I do hope to be coaching when I do retire. I really enjoy that. So, it's something just for myself in the back of my mind, like one day when I am no longer competing professionally, that's something that's going to be very important for me when I'm working with athletes, is just making sure that, their attitude goes far beyond their field of play.
You mentioned the years that you had off, come back in with the goal of going towards Tokyo. Qualifying for an Olympics, is it based on your rankings and sort of is it designated in terms of Canada has a certain amount of people in this spot we choose, or is it a case of if you're in the top whatever, you automatically get a selection? Like, how does that work? How did you had to, I guess, where did you know what I'm trying to ask? Where did you have to be 100%. To on that rankings to get into Tokyo?
The answer is both. if you are for doubles, if you're ranked in the top 10 at the they call it the deadline, the entry deadline. If you're ranked in the top 10, you're automatically in, and you get to pick your partner, or your country picks your partner. And if you're not, then your country nominates you to the ITF, and then the ITF accepts you. And I think I'm almost 100% sure it's based on ranking. And then there's also some spots that I believe are for like countries that don't have a lot of representation. So if there are players that maybe aren't ranked in the top 50 or top 100, but they represent a country that doesn't have many athletes, then I think that there's like a little loophole to possibly get in there, because the Olympics is obviously all like about diversity and having people from different countries competing in it. So there's that as well. So yeah, kind of both.
And I also can imagine too that Japan would have gotten a certain allocation. The host country obviously would get, because generally hosts get sort of that way, which I can also imagine. How does that work then in terms of the partner choice? Because if that's designated by the Canadian Olympic Committee, I mean, for the most part, when you're on the tour, I imagine, just pick and choose your partner, whoever you work best with. You don't automatically go, oh, you're Canadian, you're going to work with me. So it's a unique aspect of an Olympics that you have to play with a Canadian. You can't play with your partner if they're from the States or Australia or wherever. So how does that sort of work? Do you get a saying to like the Olympic committee, like, I want to play with Gabby, or it's basically, shut up, you've got Gabby, put up with it?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it really is country dependent. Every country has its own way of doing it. With Canada, they definitely take into consideration your request, but I also at the same time, like, they want as many people representing the country as they can. So they're going to pair up whoever makes the most sense and whoever can get in. So I think it's, preference, but also strategic. Like, if two players for doubles, for example, don't maybe jive as well, but that's the best shot at going, like, they're going to go, they're going to figure it out and they'll do their best. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I can imagine it's a big aspect. Going back to what you're saying, it's a very sort of lonely sport in the fact that you're so used to playing by yourself, but that team aspect. And I mean, I can imagine you've got to have a chemistry on the court. Like, you've got to have something. You can't be screaming and yelling at each other in the middle of a set, when you're winning or you're losing. So I guess you've got to work on that off the court as best as you can.
Yeah, for sure. And some people still do. Anyways, I mean, it's not often. I'm kidding. It's not often, but yeah, for the most part, everyone's professional. Everyone wants to win, so you put your differences aside and you try your best. Some people click, some people don't, but you do what you can. And for the most part, especially as you get older, you usually get better at being able to work with other people.
And had you played with Gabby much as a doubles partner going into the Olympics?
Yes, in the past, yes. Leading up to it, no, but we grew up playing a lot of doubles together, so it wasn't too different. I had an injury I was battling, but I still thought I was pretty proud of how well I competed, despite having not maybe had the preparation I would have hoped to have going into it. And then we had a tough draw. I mean, the girls we lost to got to, I think they won a bronze medal.
They won the bronze.
So,
yeah, they ended up going that far.
Yeah,
which, I mean, I guess if you get eliminated, you want to maybe be eliminated by somebody who's going to go on and win a medal, right? That's 100%. Kind of like, you look at it that way. Which, I mean, just going back to that moment where you knew you had qualified or you were selected and sort of, again, you'd come out of a retirement to get this goal. What's that moment like when you officially know you've punched that ticket? Is it a moment where you can quickly celebrate it and you've achieved this, or is it, wait, no, straight, we're looking at business here. We're going to these Olympics, not just to make up the numbers?
No, I was so excited. I remember when I got the call, I was so happy. I did a little celebration. I mean, I still feel like I still feel like I didn't give myself the celebration that I truly not deserved, really wanted, because for me, the whole Olympic experience was so much more than just being an Olympian. It was kind of what it represented. Like, basically, to me, the Olympic rings is you can do anything you set your mind to, because I quit. I was coaching. I wanted nothing to do with tennis. I had no reason or desire to come back. But somehow in 18 months plus a pandemic, I went from 0 in the world to 21 in the world. And I went through a lot to get there, and I pushed my body and broke my body in a lot of ways to do it, but I did it. So for me, I just feel like, it was just an experience that meant so much more than just being an Olympian. It was sort of like my reminder that if I really want something, I can do it. So I think, when I do retire one day, I'll probably just add, when I celebrate and sort of celebrate my career in that sense, I think I'll probably celebrate a little harder for that Olympic experience, because I feel like I had a moment to cheer and be super happy, but I feel like I didn't take as much time to just really, celebrate us. I guess that's the best word. And I love celebrating. You celebrate more.
Yeah, any excuse that you can do that. Which, I mean, I was going to ask, we always ask sort of our guests in terms of, are you soaking up the extra things that an Olympic brings, be it the ceremonies, the pin trading, bumping into these other athletes, which, I mean, for your case, some people get excited to bump into Rafael Nadal or Roger Federer. For you, they're just, they're colleagues on the tour. They're probably, every Thursday you see them. But like, are you soaking up that sort of atmosphere a little bit more and taking that in?
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to. I did the pin swaps and all those things, but I competed at the pandemic Olympics. So everything was super different compared to what I'd been told. Everyone was afraid of each other. We couldn't watch any other sports. And then when our event was over, we had to leave the country within like 24 hours. So unfortunately, it wasn't the Olympic experience that, every other Olympian got to have, but whatever was allowed and safe, I guess is the right word, I did my best.
Do what you can with that. Which, do you set
Exactly.
expectation? I mean, I can imagine tennis is obviously a very difficult sport that, of course, everybody's going to go out there and say, yeah, we're going to go win the gold, but it's very draw dependent. Obviously, you get that draw out and you're like, shit, I didn't want to get them in the first round. But did you and Gabby kind of set a goal, like, make the quarters, win a medal? Like, kind of what was sort of the goal going into it?
I mean, the goal was to win a medal. I for sure, and it didn't happen. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's always to win. I'm not going to go somewhere if I'm not going for the trophy. So, yeah, that's how I operate.
Which, I mean, it's obviously the thing that is unique in terms of the Olympics with a lot of the results in tennis is that, sometimes it's not, as we were talking before, reflected on the players at that time, but Canada obviously going through a bit of a golden period in terms of tennis in the last, 5 to 10 years, just obviously with Bianca winning a Grand Slam and the success that Milos and Jeannie have had and everything along those lines. But I think of Canada and tennis, I go back to the year 2000. I mean, I'm mentioning how the Woodies, but I remember Sydney. I still remember when they lost to Dan and Sebastian for that gold, which, interestingly enough, I'm seeing here is actually Canada's only ever medal in tennis. So, I mean, obviously to go out with that goal of getting a medal, realistic, it seems, given how successful Canada's sort of become in tennis. So it seems like, that would have been a bit of a breakthrough, but, for a sport in Canada that maybe hasn't been as successful that, as an outsider, I didn't even realize until recently.
Yeah, I mean, also for Canada specifically, like it's known more as a winter sport country.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something that I guess for whatever reason, the Summer Olympics is, I mean, it's super fun and gets a lot of views, but Winter Olympics, it seems to be where Canada shines. But that being said, we do have Daniel Nestor and Sebastian Leroux won a gold medal. And I mean, we do have kind of Canadian tennis is sort of the best it's ever been right now. So I think looking forward, that's definitely something that could be in the cards.
It is just amazing to think. I mean, I remember when Bianca won the US Open and it was all like the first ever Canadian to win a Grand Slam title. And it is crazy to think that a country like Canada has done that. But it's so fascinating that, winter country. But as we keep pointing out, Tokyo, you won more gold medals than Canada won in Beijing a few months later. So tides are turning here, Sharon. Summer's becoming a little bit more than winter, right? Nearly double the amount of gold too, by the way, you got in Tokyo to Beijing. So just saying.
Yes, you're right. Who knows? Crazier things have happened. So why not?
Which, I mean, obviously going out in the first round, I mean, tiebreaker in the first, then lose ultimately 6-4. It's a dumb question to ask. Was it disappointing? Of course it was disappointing. But, I mean, in any other Olympics, you'd obviously, as you say, get to soak that up. But once you're out, is it just a case of, because you've got to get out there so quickly, let's just focus on the next tournament? Or do you take a moment because it's an Olympics and it's a little bit different to kind of reflect on what you've done at that point representing your country in the Olympics?
Yeah, I mean, again, for me, it was so unique because I actually took some time off afterwards because I needed to recover. I was managing a shoulder injury. So for me, it was like sort of a blur. I had to get out of there because Tokyo was saying once your event's done, you have to be out in 24 hours. So there wasn't much to soak in. Unfortunately, I tried, but there was only so much I could really do. Only a couple places you could go on the grounds, and that was it. And then you sort of had to leave. And then when I got back, a lot of it was sort of just focusing on recovering and rehabbing. And for myself, I had a lot of personal things going on at the same time. So I feel like my attention was in all sorts of different places. But, if I'm fortunate enough to play and compete in other Olympics, I definitely feel that I will do everything I can to soak up the experience, assuming it's not another pandemic, knock on wood, or black swan situation. Assuming, everything is business as usual, I would do everything I could to enjoy the moment. And then if I felt that I needed more time to just take a minute and pause and reflect, I would definitely do that, because I think one of the biggest things I'm learning, and also that I've come to learn just through the experience of different athletes who have retired, is most of them, the number one thing it seems that people who have retired from their sport have said is they wish they enjoyed it more. So I think I try and remind myself of that when I'm really happy, and I just really just enjoy that and savor it and be happy. Don't brush it off and focus on the next thing. Just enjoy it. And then also when things are challenging, just remember this is temporary, and It's just sport, it's not who you are, it's what you do. So I think sort of just honoring wherever I'm at.
I like that attitude. Just quickly, just one more thing on Tokyo. When it comes to mixed doubles, is that chosen beforehand, or do they sort of look at it, a week or so in and go, "Hey, do you want to play?" or based on kind of how you went?
It's actually based on ranking, and I believe it's on site at the event, actually. So yeah, it's a small draw, and it's whoever can get in based on their combined ranking.
So was that an option for you on your rankings, or was that always going to be Gabby?
It wasn't, because the cutoff was very tough, and I think the cutoff was maybe 30 combined, and at the time I believe I was ranked 28. I needed someone from Canada who was top 3, and we didn't have anyone that was top 3, so it wasn't possible. So Gabby was higher than me, and Felix was there, and together their rankings actually were high enough to make that cut. So it was sort of it's math. It's really just math. That's the answer.
How it ends. Math is the answer, always the answer. You touched on 2024. Going to be at Roland Garros. You said your dream was to win the French Open. So, I can imagine that a second Olympics, to have it at the site of the French Open would be pretty incredible. Is that a goal that you are sort of pushing towards, to go back to a second Olympics and do it in a pretty amazing place?
No, but if it happens, I will embrace that. We're going to need a whole another podcast to talk about my sort of my career and how it's progressed and evolved. But essentially at this point, I've been out this year due to injury and also personal things. I finished last year with a really successful season, but I was injured for a lot of it. And then a number of personal things happened as well that I just needed to take time to heal physically and mentally and emotionally. So for myself at this point, I'm going to come back when I'm ready, and only I know when that is. And I'm going to play for myself. I think I dedicated so much of my career to playing for others, or playing for a goal that wasn't mine maybe, but inspired by someone else. And when I come back, I want to really just play for myself and just love it and enjoy it, and have no expectation or goal, if that makes sense. I want to play for me, and whatever the results look like, they look like that. That's fine. So if that happens to be really good, and then organically I make the 2024 Paris Olympics, amazing. I will love that. but I am not going to tie myself to something because I've done that a lot of my life, and it was amazing. I've accomplished so much, and I arguably accomplished maybe more than I would have because I never gave up because I felt so tied to something. But I just want to compete from a place of joy, and if that takes me through another year of tennis, great. If that takes me through longer, great. If that takes me to the Olympics, amazing. But I'm just going to embrace whatever, the universe has in store for me.
So what you're saying, Sharon, is that we can play this clip when all of this journey takes you to Olympic gold, French Opens, Wimbledon's, like all this. Like this is the start of something that, with that new attitude, that can be played basically on your actual retirement when you've won all these Grand Slams and gold medals.
That would be amazing. But yes, you have my permission. Let's do that.
Good.
Let's do it.
All right. We're going to wrap up with a bunch of fun get-to-know-you style questions. There's a couple of things I really want to touch on. Obviously, Melbourne, Australian Open, great tournament. I went to my very first Australian Open earlier this year. Loved every second of it. It was fantastic. But you've had a bit of success at Melbourne Park, quarterfinalist in the doubles and a junior doubles champion there as well. Any experiences in Melbourne? Is it a place you like to visit? And do you get much of a chance to check out the city when you're sort of there in between 5 minutes you get off the court?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Melbourne a number of times because I competed there as a junior as well. I won the Junior Australian Open, which was really fun in doubles. And I'd say over the years, I got to explore bits and pieces. And now I just have a lot of bits and pieces. So I feel like I've seen a lot of Melbourne. I definitely would love to see more of Australia. But it's such an incredible place. It's so much fun. And it's really nice because just having been there so much, I've been able to sort of sightsee and get to know kind of the vibe of the city. And I love it. It does remind me of Canada in a lot of ways. Just it's a lot warmer. For sure. But it's so amazing. I have such great memories there.
Which, I mean, Hobart, where I'm from, we of course have the Hobart International, which
and
I'm not sure you have played it. Oh, great.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah.
So there you go. You've been to my home city, which, I mean, it's pretty much Tasmania's biggest sporting event. It's like our pretty much, we get cricket and sort of things like that. But in terms of international, it is a big event for the state.
Yeah, and you guys have an awesome little, is it the Wharf or something?
Yeah, the sort of the waterfront, the wharf area. Yeah, it's right near the tennis center. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I remember the hotel, the tournament hotel is, and
yes.
Oh, I love that area. I went to the Bonnarong Wildlife
Park. Yes.
Bonnarong Park.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's so fun.
Did you get to hold it? Did you get to see a Tassie Devils and hold a koala and do all the standard things like that?
I did. I pet a koala. I saw the Tasmanian Devils. I held a koala in Sydney, actually. That was something else, but it was really cool. We got to feed the kangaroos, and it was
nice.
It was pretty fun.
I used to do media there a lot, but I think the last one I would have went to, it was the year that Jeannie got runner-up, and I went to her match. I think it might have been the quarterfinal. Ended up being played at 2 a.m. because of delays and all that sort of stuff. And there was one member of the Genie Army that was there, and I'd come in a Team Canada thing. We had the flag. It was amazing. Two of us being vocal when there was 10 people left, and she won. And I always, tell this story because I loved it, that she grabbed my phone and took a selfie of me with me on that. And that was for her, not for me. That was
that's nice.
my Canadian tennis connection that I had when Jeannie came to Hobart, which was a fun little memory. Two other things. I believe you're a bit of a foodie. I watched one of your videos you had on YouTube, some cooking channel stuff there, which is great. Love it. Keep that up. And also Starbucks mugs, I believe you collect. Is this something that is a massive collection? Do you just kind of everywhere you go, got to grab a Starbucks mug, basically?
That's so funny. I love cooking. I'm also vegan, so I do a lot of my own cooking. At first, it was, I guess, out of necessity, but now it's so mainstream, so I find that to be really easy. I've always loved cooking. It's very therapeutic for me. And the Starbucks, I don't know where you found that out, but yeah, I have a Starbucks mug collection. I have to say I've been slacking because during sort of the whole pandemic, Canada was a country similar to Australia where it was in full lockdown and you couldn't come back unless you quarantined. So I basically was gone for 8 months, and I couldn't collect the mugs because I didn't have enough space. I
You
sort
need
of
an extra
had
couple
my
of
life with me.
suitcases.
Exactly, and I couldn't afford the luggage fees. So there was like a chunk of time in the last couple of years where I haven't collected the mugs, but I have a pretty good collection, and I do intend to get the ones that I'm missing at some point. But I think
Catching
it's
up on
fun.
them.
Like I do love it. It's a
Which
fun little hobby.
there would be a rare one out there because we did have a Starbucks in Hobart for about 5 years. I actually worked at it. It was a lot of fun. But so there is a Tasmania Starbucks mug in existence, which I don't know if anybody still has out there. So there's a rare one to find.
Yeah, I gotta find that one.
Yeah, exactly. If I find one, I'll hook you up. As I said, we
Amazing.
wrap up, Sharon, with some quick fire questions. These are Team Canada questionnaire that they gave athletes ahead of Rio and Pyeongchang. Don't believe they did this ahead of Tokyo, unfortunately, so we'll bring this back for you. But let's start off with your favorite ever Olympic moment is.
Oh, I think that's a really tough one because there's so many good ones. Um, I actually think this is an old one and it's kind of a sad one, but it was when, and it's really bad, I'm forgetting the athlete, but there was a sprinter who was supposed to, I believe he was supposed to medal, and he off the blocks his hamstring tore,
Mm.
and then his dad jumped down on the
Yeah, that was yeah. And in Barcelona, I believe that was. I think.
yeah, so
Yeah,
long
yeah,
ago. And
yeah.
if you can
Yeah.
remember who it was, that would be amazing because it's
Yeah,
slipping my mind.
I think he was British. Yeah, can't remember the
Possibly.
name. It's slipping my
But
tongue,
you
but I
know
know
what I'm
exactly what you're talking
talking
about. Yeah, I
about.
know exactly.
Yes.
Famous image of his
So
dad helping him across the line. Yeah,
yes. And I know that that's like kind of not the one that most people would pick,
it's a great
but
answer. Yeah.
it is, yeah, there's just something about it. It just makes me my like,
There's so many of those moments. So, like,
yeah.
there was a couple in Tokyo. Runners fell down. Somebody stopped to pick them up, help them. That. We had our athlete in the decathlon win a bronze, and basically, his teammate Cedric Dubler got more famous because he basically sacrificed his last race to be like, mate, hurry the fuck up. You've got to run. You're going to win a medal here. So, kind of that became a thing in Australia, doing a doubler, basically helping your mate out. So, yeah, things like
Aw.
that, which aren't
Yeah.
necessarily a gold medal thing. They're always great sort of memories to have.
Yes. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'd say that's the one that's there. When I think of the Olympics, for some reason I think of that one.
No, it's
That
a
one.
fantastic. I like that. You're the first to answer that, Sharon. So I like it. It's a long time coming for that to be an answer. If you could choose any Olympic host city, where would it be?
That's a great question. Rome.
Rome.
I
Yes.
think Rome would be amazing. I know Athens did it. Yeah, but
Hmm.
I just think Rome would be so cool.
Yeah. No, it's been a while. 60 since they had it. I mean, obviously they got the next winters, but that's not in Rome. It's in Milan, so it's a different part of
Yes,
the country, Ben. Um,
yes.
in your spare time, I mean, we might have already answered this. In your spare time, what do you most like to do?
It depends. But really, I love meditate. I'm a big meditator. Yoga. I love to journal. I love to read. I'm kind of a nerd, I guess. Now I'm listening to myself. I'm kind of like a hippie nerd.
Nothing wrong with that.
The
That
vegan
fits
hippie
perfectly in the
nerd.
show.
But yes, I would say meditating, yoga, reading, journaling. And I'm also, on the flip side of it, I'm also super spontaneous. I love adventures. So if someone is like, hey, you know what? Do you want to go drive here or just take a trip there? Or just do something. You want to go try this place, or there's this really cool event that's happening. You want to go? I'm in. So
You do it.
I love kind of the random spontaneous adventures.
Nice. I like that. I mean, just with your cooking blogs, you should be doing like spontaneous adventure blogs like this. Have a website for it all. So
I
that
love
works.
that. Yes,
Yeah.
we need to talk more about that.
Do
That's a
it.
great idea.
Absolutely. The weirdest instruction a coach ever gave you was.
I don't even know how to explain it, but it was like changing my grip, the way I like held my racket when I was returning my serve. And they were adamant that it was gonna like really help my tennis. But like that's something that's so silly. And I remember it messed me up so much. He wanted me to hold the racket a different way in between shots, not
Wow.
during the shot, which is like nothing, it's just really strange. Like why that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
It just confuses me more. So yeah, that.
I like that. That is wow. That is very strange.
Yeah.
If you could have lunch with any one person, who would it be?
That answer has changed a lot over the years. I think right now in this moment, it would be, and this is living, I'm guessing, right?
It
Yeah.
could be any. Let's go living or dead. Why not? You've got the
Oh, this
power
is
to choose
tough.
anyone.
This is tough. I mean, there's like part of me that wants to say like, family member that's passed, of course. But if I'm going the sport route or the athlete or personal route, I would say actually maybe like Jay Shetty. I
Okay.
love his podcasts.
Hmm.
I think he's interviewed some amazing people. I think he's super fascinating. This is another one. John Wooden. He's one of the arguably best basketball coaches of all time. Love his stuff, and I think he'd be super interesting. And there's also my meditation teacher, Elena Brower, who she doesn't know she's my teacher, but I do a lot of her stuff. So I don't know. This is really hard. Can I have
It's a
one with
busy
all?
lunch. You have to have a
It's
big
a very.
table, basically. Book a
I
few
will eat
seats.
3 lunches. I will go back to
Done.
back to back.
Exactly. Yeah, be very hungry that day. Two more. Growing up, who was your favorite sports team?
I wasn't a big sports team person. I liked I didn't follow team sports. It was always like tennis. I loved Martina Hingis. She was my
Mm.
favorite.
Hmm.
Sports team. I guess I'd have to say the Leafs, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, because it's like a hockey Toronto, but I never really followed them.
It's all right.
Now,
They haven't done very well for a while, so it's
no, I
okay.
know, and at the time it was just like sad, but yeah, at least now they're making the playoffs, but
Our,
it's
our
okay.
our co-host on this show, sadly not with us, Colin. He's a big Leafs fan, so I like to
Ah,
make fun of him. I'm a
I
Flames and a
understand.
Ducks fan, so it's
Okay, plain. All right, that's good. At least it's a
yeah.
Canadian.
I had to
Yeah,
have a Canadian and American team. You
there.
see hockey as a kid in Australia, you've got to go for the Ducks, but then of course have to have a Canadian
Mhm.
team too. So that's how it works.
Love that.
Last one I'll ask you here: what is your favorite sports movie?
That's a great question. And that's a tough one to answer. Um, what keeps coming to mind is Rudy. That's the one
Hmm.
that just I can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's like in my head, like Rudy is your man. I also remember the Titans. I think that's
Yeah.
amazing. Blindside was so good.
Yep.
Um, there's so many good ones. Moneyball. I thought that
Yeah.
was just very interesting. But I guess Rudy wants to
Got to go for it. Yeah,
just,
if that's in your head, go for it. It's
yeah,
like
it's
I
in my
always like
head.
to sort of find out, like athlete from certain sports. There's a couple of tennis movies out there. Obviously, we had King Richard recently.
King
Sort of a
Richard's
tennis.
amazing.
It's a tennis movie. So like, I mean, it's kind of it's good when you have these movies that kind of correlate to your sport. Every time we get a bobsledder on, it's like if you don't answer Cool Runnings, then what's wrong with you? But yeah, it's kind of interesting when it gets because tennis is a sport where there's so many stories to tell, right? So it's
That's
kind of
right. That's
plenty to go
right.
out there. You just don't slap people when you win an award for it, but we won't touch on that basically anymore. Sharon, before we let you go, social media, people can follow you, your journey moving forward. Where can people stay up to date with what you're up to?
Yeah, I would say I'm most active on Instagram. So you can follow me there. My handle is Shazzy with 4 Z's. So
Four.
you can 4 Z's. You can follow me there. I've got Twitter. I'm really not as active as I should be. But Sharon_Fichman, you can follow me there.
Perfect.
Yeah.
TikTok? Is there TikTok? Does that exist for you as well? Or
There is TikTok, but I deleted it. I
right.
just think it's too much. I'm 31. I'm not 21. I feel like I'm struggling with just being active on one. So
Yep.
that's where I'm at right now in my
It's
life.
fine. I still always joke and say that TikTok's that Kesha song, right? I still don't know what it is. So, Sharon, it has been so much fun having you on the show to learn about your amazing career, your Olympic experiences, tennis in general, everything along those lines. And we will keep an eye on things, how they go. And as I said, a couple of years' time, all the gold medals, all the Grand Slams. We'll get you back on and we'll talk about you winning all of those.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.